All right, so let me return the favor and tell you a little bit about myself. So give you some context on why I care about sales, inside sales, and why I want to talk about the exciting topic of cold emailing and cold calling today. So I started a company called Elastic Sales. And what we did with Elastic, what the concept was to offer startups and technology companies, specifically companies that are focused on B2B, a sales team on demand. So think AWS for sales, right? By now we've worked with over 150 venture-backed startups in the Bay Area alone, and we've helped them through the sales, discovery phase, exploring different sales models, figuring out what works and what doesn't work, all the way to the scaling of sales, either in the top of the funnel or the end of the funnel. While we were doing that, we developed a little software we called our secret sauce called Close.io. That was a piece of software that we built for our own needs. We didn't like the sales software that was available out there, so we thought we'd just build something that was better. And to be honest, at the beginning, we really didn't know what we were doing. So it took us a while to really actually, by running all these different campaigns, being in this very unique position of doing sales for tons and tons of different companies, and with different sales cycles, different audiences, different verticals, we started slowly creating a real clear vision of what we believed was kind of the future of sales software. And that's what Close.io really turned into. We never intended to launch that. We thought that was our cool secret sauce, the thing that we showed people when we wanted to hire them that thought, wow, this is awesome. And the thing that made our salespeople really happy and productive. And then slowly but surely, there was more and more outside demand for the software. So friends of our salespeople and our customers, everybody started asking if they could get the software. And I, as kind of a focused founder, always was saying, no, we're not going to do this. Let's focus on one thing. Let's not go all directions. But based on the outside demand, slowly and surely there was an inside group in the company that started lobbying for releasing the software and unleashing the software to the world. So those two things grew and grew, and eventually I gave up. And we launched Close.io in January last year. And as a founder, you're almost always wrong. Almost always, right? But once in a while, really rarely, you're glad you're wrong. And Close.io is one of those cases. I knew that it would be a huge success. I just thought it would take us 3-4 years to catch up with the revenue that Elastic was making. And we did that in 11 months. So software has been a lot more successful than I would have thought. This kind of a competitive market. People really love it. All right, so let's now talk about the most exciting thing in inside sales, cold calling 101, right? That's kind of like an uncomfortable, thank you. One person at least is excited, right? So this is kind of something that makes a lot of people uncomfortable. It's a really challenging thing to do well, and it's even more challenging to do it well and feel good about yourself, in your company. So to ease us into the topic, I thought I'd start with baby pictures. And now now that I have kids, I'm gonna start with my babies. So this is our oldest one. We launched him almost 2 years ago. And in March 11th, so just a few weeks, we launched a second project. So this is the second baby boy here. So all right, cold calling. So there's a couple of, cold calling is simple in its form, right? And there's a couple of things you guys have to keep in mind when you do cold calling, when you want to do it successfully. But just because it's simple, it surely isn't easy. All right, so we'll go step by step and go through these concepts one by one. So the first step is you have to reach people, right? Now, again, that doesn't sound like a mind-blowing concept, duh. But then again, when you talk to founders, and I talk to founders every week, about 30 to 40 founders book sales office hours with me and ask, about sales strategies and how to scale sales and how to fix their problems. And when I talk to these people, and they talk to me about cold calling, they usually start with, well, here's the math that I have in my mind. So we're going to be calling 100 people, and we should be converting, let's say, worst case, 10%. So 10 of these people will buy. So if one rep does 100 calls a day, we should be golden, right? All right, I see a few smiles. I assume those are the people that have done cold calls before in their life. So this math doesn't work because your typical reach rate will be between 10 and 15%. So you call 100 people, you even talk to just 10 people. It's impossible to close 10, right? And now, there's differences depending on the market that you're selling to, right? So if you are, let's say, if you are calling startups, for instance, which is the thing that we did when we started Elastic, and I'll show you the exact script that got us our first few customers. But when we started doing that, if you call a startup, if you actually have a phone number of a startup, somebody's gonna pick up, and usually it's the founder, right? There's like 3 people in a room, and the phone rings, everybody's like, what? The phone rings. Who is this? Is this your mom? No, I don't know. But they pick up, right? They're totally blindsided by that. But if you call Fortune 500 companies and you're like, let's try to cold call the VP of marketing of Coca-Cola, right? Then good luck, right? It's going to take a lot of dialing, and you're going to feel like you're not getting anywhere. So depends on if you're calling like local businesses, SMBs, professionals, or larger enterprise. Cold calling, reach rate is going to be probably the most defining factor to your success or not. If you cannot actually reach people, cold calling will probably never make sense for your business. So you need to think about like how many people can we actually reach. So a few things to keep in mind there. One, time zones, all right? The next one is really like, I mean, it has to do a lot with lead generation, being sure that your data is right, but it also has a lot to do with are the people that I'm calling the type of people that will actually pick up the phone, right? Or am I only going to get voicemails? And kind of what are the basic market? Is that market that I'm trying to call basically ready to pick up the phone for me to even have a chance? Once you actually get a conversion rate or a reach rate that's actually okay, if you're between 10 and 15 and 20% and everything else in your funnel looks good, you can start optimizing these things, right? And you can start having multiple people dial and use an auto dialer or predictive dialer where a machine calls 20 numbers at a time and drops all the calls that are not picking up or going to voicemails, so your reps are constantly on calls, on actually reaching a person. You can use technology to go really pro on this, but if you start off like old school and you don't reach at least 10%, no predictive dialer, nothing else will actually fix that problem, right? And when we first started playing around with predictive dialers or auto dialers, we did it really old school where we got a couple of temps, like 5 to 6 temps around the sales rep, and these people would all dial, and when they had someone with like wireless headsets, when they got somebody, they were like, here, right? And the funny thing is like, you totally different voices, but people, when you just say, hey, my name is Steli, and then the person says, yeah, what's this about? Hey, yeah, I was wondering if blah, 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 you're interested. Like every thousands call, somebody would be like, you sounded different a second ago, but most people don't, right? But most people, your brain would actually say, no, this was the same voice because it makes no sense for people to change voices. They give you different sentences. Brain works that way. So you can do all kinds of optimizations, but you need to look at a baseline. If you can't reach 10, 15% when you just do 100 stupid calls yourself, you're in trouble, right? Cold calling, don't try to fix how great your pitch is, right? Reach rate, sound good, right? So this is something people underestimate, especially people in technology and startups. We're all about the product, the technology, the features. And we tell you about all these cool features that we have, the paradigm shifting platform technology that API connected through social and virtual reality through a mobile texting app, right? So we want to talk about all the exciting shit that nobody can compute in the time frame that a first sentence in a cold call could allow you. So what you have to do is you have to understand that in communication, only a small part is actually what you're saying, and a bigger part is how you're saying it and how it sounds, right? If I say, I'm super excited to be here, right? I mean, it doesn't really matter that I say I'm super excited to be here, right? It didn't sound exciting, so you guys weren't excited. Probably didn't buy that I'm excited. Right? This whole thing, you didn't even hear what I said. You just thought, oh, this guy's really nervous, or oh, this guy really hates his life, or whatever, right? Or, oh, I'm super uncomfortable all of a sudden in my seat. So, same thing is true, like in one-to-one physical communication, body language actually plays a much bigger part than voice. So it's like, I don't know, the exact percentage, 60% body language, 30% voice, and 10% actually the content that you were actually speaking to the other person. This is really hard for engineers especially to believe, but it's actually true. Like your body language is gonna have a pretty dramatic impact. On the phone, you don't have body language, all you have is voice. The interesting thing is that within the first 5 seconds of a phone call, when somebody starts to talk to you, you're going to start imagining who that person is and where that person is. We cannot compute language if we don't add some visuals to it. It's the way our brain works. So we're going to imagine somebody somewhere, while they're calling us, to be able to compute that conversation better. Make sure that you actually sound in a way that doesn't make somebody imagine some like person in a gray t-shirt sitting in a gray room in a gray cubicle doing like call center type calls, right? If you're not excited, if you're not enthusiastic, and if you don't sound like somebody that's smart or funny or somebody that's interesting at least, then you're not interested and excited about this call. Why should I give a shit, right? Why should I care if you're not caring, right? So you need to make sure that when you call people, I know it's the 100th call and the person before that call told you that you are ugly and your children will, be stupid and you'll never make it in your life. Sometimes you'll have really harsh people on the phone when you do cold calls, which is why I think cold calling is awesome, because it's an exercise in emotional stability, right? Can you manage your own state and your own emotions? But the biggest challenge about this is every single call you have to bring it, right? There's no like, oh, you're the Jordan of cold calls, so when you start calling somebody, everybody already says yes, right? No, when you can be the best athlete in the world, when you get on the field, the scores read 0, right? You have to perform today. It doesn't matter what you did yesterday. Cold calling is the same way. It doesn't matter what the last call was. The next person doesn't give a shit if you had a great conversation. They're only going to judge you about what you say today and how you sound. So make sure when you reach somebody, they actually sound good. And when you do that, the next thing, once you have a little bit of rapport, now I'll go through an actual script. You need to be able to ask a bunch of basic questions to do what George was saying, mainly qualify somebody. Nobody should buy your stuff if they're not qualified for your product, right? It's going to be a waste of time for you and a waste of time for the company in the long term. So you need to learn the art of asking questions and the power of questions, because we all have been conditioned to answering questions when somebody asks us. So the natural impulse is just to answer when somebody asks. So you can learn a lot about the people you're interacting with. And you need to, because how else would you ever build a relationship or be able to tell them that they should buy your solution if you don't know anything about them? So make sure you ask some questions. You don't launch into like a massive pitch. Then please don't be surprised if they have objections. Right? That's another thing like you should see coming, but then people are still totally unprepared for that. Like they do a pitch, and when somebody says, well, I'm not interested right now, or, well, how about security? They're totally baffled by it, although they had this question 20 times already today. And they're like, well, let me compute an answer to you right now. We could, and then they just ramble on forever, right? Instead of like preparing for the question, being able to answer it in a concise way in 1 or 2 sentences. All right, so, one more thing, close. Another thing, like most people do cold calling and then they have no call to action, they're not really going for it. You learn that when people are surprised when a prospect will go, well, yeah, I'm interested. Really? Okay. Well, I don't know, I wasn't prepared for that. I don't know what the next step is. So go for the close, and I'll show you a real example of how to do that on our first cold call. So this is the actual script that we used the day after we had the idea for Elastic Sales. So we had the idea of Elastic Sales. We were like, wouldn't it be awesome if it was like this scalable Salesforce for startups, game changer, it would be amazing. And then we thought, well, does anybody really care? And do we really want to invest in this idea? So instead of wasting months of coming up with the name and logo and a website and doing market research and putting together PowerPoint presentations and anything else, we wrote this script in an afternoon, and then we scraped Crunchbase, and we looked for all companies that had raised a Series A in the Bay Area, and then we selected those out that we knew personally. Back then we were doing something else, so we didn't want the world quite yet to know that we were flirting with this new idea. So we said, if we're going to do cold calls for 2 weeks and have the market educate us if this is an idea worth pursuing or not. And if we can get one company interested, although we have no credibility, we're going to use fake names. We don't want the world to know who we are. So no credibility, no nothing for us. If we can convince one company, it might be worth doing. So this script got us 7 companies that were ready to buy. We couldn't service them because we didn't have enough salespeople. So we picked 2 random ones and started the business after 2 weeks. So here's what we were doing. We were calling startups, right? So this is a very specific audience, but here's the script. I'm going to run through it really quickly. Somebody should give me, I recognize that, kind of a half-time feedback maybe, so I know where I am in time-wise. All right, so here's what we were doing. So we would call somebody out and say, hey, my name is Steve or whatever. I'm calling some startups in the area just to find out if they might be a good fit for the beta program that we're running right now. So this sentence is really important because I said a few things that really build a little bit of rapport. Number one is I'm calling other startups. It implies that I'm a startup in the area. It implies that I might be in the area as well. And then I'm saying that might want to buy our product or solution. I say that might be a good fit for a beta program. Beta program, again, very lingo. It means that I'm probably a startup, they're a startup if I'm calling them. And this is all about exploring if they're a good fit. It's not about selling them something. At that stage of the call, the other person thinks, all right, so what is this about, right? So the next sentence needs to give some minimal viable pitch, like 1 sentence that explains in the simplest way possible what you do, right? You can't do 10 sentences, 1. So what I would say is what we do in a sentence, this is another thing, I said that really quickly, what we do in a sentence, which tells the other person, relax, I'm not going to talk for an hour, right? relax, it's going to be fine. In one sentence, you're going to know what this is about because you don't know who the hell just called you. So what we do in a sentence is we provide companies with a sales team on demand. Right? That's the simplest way that I could think of telling people what we were doing. Does that, in general, sound interesting to you? Right? At this point, honestly, I really didn't care what they would tell me. They would say, no. Interesting. What's your current sales process like? People would say, maybe. Well, interesting. What's your current sales process like? If people would say yes, I would say, awesome. What's your current sales process like? Right? Now, it wasn't that I don't care at all if they're interested or not. I just didn't care at that point in the conversation because I knew they didn't have enough information. I didn't have enough information. But I knew that they were thinking something. At that point, after they heard my first pitch, they were either thinking, no, I'm not interested, or they were thinking something. And what my job was to allow them to verbalize that. So they don't keep thinking that while I keep talking, right? Communication, they cannot listen or hear me if they're thinking this shit sucks and it's not interesting to me. I need to allow them to say it, right? Verbalize it, get it out of their head so their head is free to hear what I'm saying next, which was, for me, going into qualifying. So I would ask them a couple of questions to figure out if I even thought this was a good idea, right? And once we got into it, usually you would be able to explore, is there potential or isn't there potential, right? And then what we do is something I call a test close. This is not about like getting them to sign anything right now. It was impossible in the first call to actually get somebody to do that. Yeah, there's a question.
So you said you pulled data out of Crunchbase. Did you use it to personalize this at all, or everybody got the same pitch?
Everybody get the same call. It was B2B startups raised a Series A in a specific area that are people that we don't know. And then we go to their website and try to find somebody that's sales related, and if not, the founder. All right, so once we got into the test closing, what this was all about was figuring out if they could even buy in a reasonable amount of time after we figured out that they probably qualify for it. So we asked them, hey, we want to launch this beta program in the next 4 weeks. Does that timeline sound reasonable? This is a beta program, so we can only give you one salesperson, and it's only going to cost you X, Y, and Z. We couldn't give them more salespeople. We didn't have yet a scalable sales force to give. And then we go through, the final question is really the most important one. One of the most powerful questions in sales in general is, what is the decision-making process? Okay, so now that we figured out that this is kind of interesting for both parties, what are all the steps that it's going to take for us to actually work together? Right? You need to ask that question and then have the other person guide you through the entire sales process. Well, the next thing is I'm going to talk to my team and see what they think. Cool, and if they think it's interesting, what happens next typically? Well, I don't know, we'll get another call and have everybody participate so they can ask you questions. Exciting? Let's say I can answer those questions. What usually happens? Are we in business? No, then you have to talk to legal. Aha, I thought so, that makes sense, all right. What happens after legal? Well, after legal, you have to talk to our advisory board. Cool. And then you have to do a presentation in front of a board. And are we in business now? No, now you have to go to my palm reader and, I have to, whatever, ask my grandma, like whatever all the steps are until the other person says, yeah, then I guess we're pretty much in business. Cool. Now I know what it's going to take. When somebody tells me, oh, we were almost closing and then there was a big surprise, I always think they didn't ask that question. They really didn't know what all the steps are. What was the big surprise? We have to go through procurement. How surprising, right? Or, oh, we had to go through this other department. How surprising. It's only surprising because you didn't ask the right questions. All right, so this is all on cold calling. Anybody that feels the urge to ask a question right now, like that's a really important question regarding cold calling.
So
yes.
do you ever leave a voicemail or all this callback?
It's a religious question in cold calling. Voicemails or no voicemails, right? People arguing, I've seen all kinds of threads. I don't know, I'm pretty agnostic. It depends. If you want to cold call somebody multiple times, if you plan on saying, this is my list of 100 people, I'm going to call all these people multiple times until I reach them, voicemail might be a bad idea because it kind of takes away your permission to keep calling. Except if you're like 12 years old and in love or something. But like in professional settings, you can leave 100 voicemails. So you might don't want to do that. But in many cases, I don't see people actually calling these numbers multiple times. So it might make sense. And you can also experiment with voicemails. People have done all kinds of crazy things, and sometimes they work and sometimes they don't. So I don't know. You really have to test that. Honestly, I don't know the number anymore. I know that we're calling like 60, 70 a day, and it was like over a span of 2 weeks or whatever that is. Yeah, people say, so you want to, we didn't do this, but today I would actually advise you to ask, hey, is this a bad time, right? To just allow them to say, yeah, I'm in between whatever, just about to give a VC pitch or something. So if people tell you this is a bad time, that you need to learn to read between the lines and understand between this is actually a real objection versus this is actually telling me I want to get off the phone, right? So when somebody doesn't have time, you reschedule. But if you talk, they say at the beginning, yeah, sure. No, this is not a bad time, talk. And then you talk a little bit and they're like, well, you know what, can you just send me some information? Any other thing that kind of doesn't allow you to really have a conversation. One hack that you may or may not want to try is to tell them, cool, I'll do what you're asking me to. Can I write down your email address? What's the best email to send this information to? So they'll give you their email. The moment they do that, they bring down their guard and because they now feel like comfortable, this is not going to take on forever. And usually, if you then say, just to be sure, put in the right information, what's your sales process like right now? You know, and you ask maybe a shorter version, or maybe not. It depends on your ethics and how comfortable you are. But I've done this many times. You know, people are like, oh, send me an email. Oh, cool. Okay, what's your email address? Just so I get the right info and how blah. And then there's another hour conversation going on. Right? And I'm not forcing people. I'm not talking for an hour. They're talking for an hour. So like they have the permission to stop at any point and say, hey, mofo, I said I don't have time. And then I'll say, and it happened. Like once in a while, somebody was like, dude, I said I don't have time. Well, all right, that's the last question I asked. Then you get an email from me, and you know you call it a fair warning. Yep.
This is very totally self-serving, but the very first paragraph of what you just showed us, the really important thing about that was making you approachable to and relatable to the person that you're calling. You're saying, hey, I'm also a startup that's in your area. So immediately they're like, oh, hey, I could like know these people. What if you are calling people
and you're not?
And you're, yeah,
yes.
and no, and not just that. You are like you are cold calling into an industry that is incredibly uncomfortable with what you're doing. Like real estate, not a super tech-friendly industry. In fact, very tech and like anti-tech. It's very defensive against technology. What do you do then? How do you make that relatable while also explaining what you're doing? So I'm picking your brain.
Yeah, so it's hard to do. There's no, you know, if my audience hates me, what do? I don't know, like this is magic. But one thing that you can do, if you're not the person that they can relate to, find a person that they can relate to and relate that person to you. So you could say, listen, I think cold calling sucks. The only reason I'm calling you is we have John, who's from your neighborhood and a real estate agent, and he bothered us until we gave him this technology, and he got XYZ value. So now we started thinking, fuck, maybe we should tell some real estate agents about what we're doing because we're seeing all these people having success with it. I thought I'll call a bunch of people and get their advice. And do you have 10 minutes? What do you think about this? Right? I mean, again, not perfect. You're not a real estate agent. You don't know what you're talking about, but you're saying this other person who is like you had success, and that prompted me to try to reach out to you.
That's funny because that's actually exactly what happened. So easy to use. Continue on.
Awesome. I'll take another one or two, and then the other ones you guys can afterwards me, and we'll do it. Yes.
What about when you ask someone about their purchasing process, right? What if they're unwilling to share?
The steps? Yeah, sometimes people, in any question you ask, some people will just give very like uncooperative answers, right? So what's the next step? We would have to talk. Who and why and what does that usually look like? I would have to think about that. Okay, and so did you ever buy something from a call like this? Like, what was the last time you guys bought something? Like you decided that you needed a new technology or something? I don't know, right? Now this person honestly doesn't know anything, but this person is telling me, fuck you, dude, I don't know you, I don't owe you any answers, and he's right. Now I can do two things. I can either awkwardly continue to ask questions, it's not gonna lead me anywhere. I can either be defeated and be like, okay, and then I see this all the time. I'll hang up and I'll need the urge to go to talk to people about what a huge douchebag I just talked to, right? Let me distract everyone else that's working right now because I feel emotionally insecure about myself because this person didn't give me my validation. Or what you do is you're going to address the elephant in the room, and this is not just for anything. When it's not going well, right? When you just feel like shit, this is not going well. It's usually an issue of trust. It's, I don't trust you, I don't want to talk to you. If I really believe what you told me, yes, but I don't, right? Somebody calls you and is like, hey, you won $1 million. All you need is answer these 4 questions. Dude, you hang up, right? You're not like, what, I'm a millionaire? Like, you don't believe me, no matter what I say. Again, saying, right, and sounding. So what you have to do is you address the elephant in the room. You say, listen, I get cold calls. I can totally get that you're not interested in this, and you don't really think I could do what I'm telling you to do. Because if you believed I could do this, you'd be interested. You would tell me what we have to do to get this done. But you don't, right? 9 out of 10 times the other person is going to be like, yeah. Now we can have a conversation, right? Now the person brings the guard down. Now we can talk about the real issue. You don't give a shit about what I'm saying. You don't believe a single word of what I'm saying. So let's see if I can build some credibility. But you have to address that issue, and most people don't. And I'll continue with the cold email stuff, and then either one-on-one or afterwards we'll do the Q&As just so I get through the basic stuff. And I'll share my email address, and you guys can book sales office hours, and we can talk forever. All right, so cold emailing one-on-one. So same simple structure when you do cold emails that you have to keep in mind. There's a few simple things people have to do. First, they have to open your email. That's the biggest hurdle you have. I can't tell you how many times people send me an email and say, hey, Steli, just quickly wanted to run this by you and hear what your feedback is. This is the big email campaign we're planning on sending to 1 million people. And my reply is, where the fuck is the subject line? I'm not going to read any email if you don't show me what the subject line is you're interested in. Like, that's the only thing I'm interested in at first. At first, I want to see 5 versions of a subject line. I don't want to see the body, right? Because most people will never see the body of your email. So first thing you have to do is get over the hurdle of getting opened, right? So spend 80% of your time on the subject, 20% on the body, and not the other way around, which is what almost everybody does. Just because the body has more words, they think that's more important. It's not, right? So spend a lot of time on the subject line. Don't make it sound like it's a marketing email. Marketing emails are not opened, right? Whenever it sounds like this was not sent by a person, I'm not opening that email. 10 reasons why Close-eye will change your sales channel. Opening the fucking email. No human being writes a subject line to that like me. But if somebody says, hey, quick question, right? Now that's on the more risky, douchier part of it, but it's definitely going to get opened a lot. The problem why it's douchey is because what you're promising and what you're delivering might be too far apart. The quick question sounds very intimate, and then you're giving me a pitch. Right? So it's not really a quick question, and you're not, like, you could do it if the quick question is, Steli, I've seen you're amazing, I watch all your videos and blah, 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 this and that, and I'm doing something in the sales space, can I ask you, can you take 10 minutes of your time? That's okay, that delivers the promise of the question, but still, it's edgy, you need to decide if you want to do that. So, but either way, you need to sound like a human being. Imagine you writing an email to your mom or your dad, and then write a subject line accordingly. Don't write like the 100 reasons why everybody loves social networking, blah, blah, blah. So spend a lot of time figuring out what to do to make people open your emails. Now you have to make them read it. And it follows the same simple structure. Every sentence is a pitch to read on. Every sentence is your opportunity to tell me why I should give a fuck, right? Why should I care and keep reading? Because I have 150 other emails to read. And they're from people I know. Like, why should I keep reading what you sent me? So you need to pitch me. A simple format is to say in one sentence, here's who I am, here's what I do, right? Then if you can, add some credibility, sprinkle some credibility. Here's the customers that are winning because of us, or here's our investors, or here's the press that we got, or here's where my mother is teaching, and here, whatever. Any kind of credibility that you can lend yourself, add it, so I start believing what you just told me, and then tell me what the next step is. Keep it really simple. Who I am, what we do, why you should care and believe us, what's next. Keep it really, really simple. And then, what's next is really the close. Give them a call to action, not 5. Not, you can sign up here for a product, or you can click here to sign a form to make a call with me, or here you could get a demo, or you watch this video here, or I attach 5 PDFs that you, for your convenience, that you can read, all of which are 500 pages each. Or you can do, no, I'm not going to stop my life for a week to manage to deal with your email. Just one simple thing. Click this, reply this, call this, say this. One thing, right? Decide for one thing, ask me to do that. And then follow up, right? And I have a lot of views on follow-up, but for cold emails, you can't follow up forever, but follow up once or twice, right? Just to show me that you actually respect the whole process. Don't send me one cold email. I never reply to a first cold email. My general view of this is archive, and if the person really cares, they'll follow up. The second email, I'll glance at, right? And then the third, I actually decide if I want to reply. So we're not going to get into this, right? I have like 2-3 minutes. So if you want to learn about this stuff and a lot more, I'm trying my best to write a lot about it. So there's a free sales email course you can sign up at close.io/free sales course. It's over 30 days. There's multiple emails involving scripts, how to manage objection, how to do cold calling, how to do sales process for startups. If you go to close.io or blog.close.io, there's a ton of content. And then last but not least, if you send me an email to Steli, S-T-E-L-I, at close.io, you can book a 30-minute session whenever is next available on my calendar and talk to me about any kind of sales-related issue you have, or question, or problem, or whatever. And I'll try my best to help as much as I can. That's it. That's all I got. 3 minutes?
2 minutes for
2
questions.
Questions. Let's if somebody still has questions, let's go for it. Yes.
You mentioned Alto.
Yeah.
Is there one that is online that can be
So everything I said, he was like, it's an auto dialogue, it's a predictive calling multiple. No, sorry, I'm just giving you a hard time. Yes, there's actually InsideSales.com is an auto dialogue that's online that connects with Salesforce and multiple other things. There's a bunch of them. Inside Sales is probably one of the better ones. There's a bunch of them that try to be a little bit more modern, and then there's a bunch of them that are like, I don't know, Windows 95 level software that you download on your machine or something. But there's a lot of options available. Sure can. Yeah.
So what's in that short email, cold email, what's an example of an effective call to action for that?
Reply, right? Hit reply, and hit reply if this is interesting, let's start a dialogue. Another thing, usually what you want is you want to see if you can get to a call. Sometimes that's like the best thing to do, sometimes that's too much to ask for, but if you ask for a call, don't say, just tell me what would be a good time and we'll jump on a call. Because now you have to make all the decisions, look at your calendar, make all this work. No, I'll just give you 2 options. I'll say, hey, would next Tuesday or Thursday this or that time work? So now you just have to check and tell me yes or no. And then, but sometimes that doesn't work, so you can experiment with another call of action and just ask people, hey, hit reply and let me know, wow, if you have any questions about this. So hit reply if this is interesting, let's start a dialogue. And sometimes people will reply and be like, why did you email me or blah? And then a few emails into it, you're now scheduling a call and you can actually do something. Yeah.
What's a good combination of cold emailing and calling? Do one after the other, or do you do 3 emails or a call?
Yeah, the magic formula. Everybody wants that. I don't have it. It really depends on your product, your market, what you're doing. Aaron, which is a good friend of mine as well. So he, for enterprise sales and large sales, he will always, and I would advise for that too, when you do Fortune 500, to send emails first and try to get a referral down the org to the right person, then schedule a call versus doing cold calls, which is usually super ineffective. But if you're calling doctors or lawyers or accountants or teachers, you might not have to do the email. Sometimes reps feel more comfortable when they can hang on to something real as an email. I sent you an email, that's why I'm calling, right? If that works, whatever works, right? But email is effective to finding the right person. Email is also effective sometimes to save time if you get a lot of hits to just schedule things. And email is really great for follow-up. But if you can actually reach a significant amount of people, you may not have to send an email first. You may just call them and then use emails as follow-ups. Was there a question?
Yeah, you sort of answered it.
Okay, awesome. Yeah.
So, what is the HTML and normal text email? Which is more effective?
Yeah, HTML or text. I always send text emails. I never use HTML because when I send an email to my mom, I don't go and do a nice HTML email with logos and images and everything. I just send an email like a real human being. So whenever I open something that's HTML, again, I assume no human being ever sent this, so why should I give a shit? So I'm not reading.
How do you get over the fear factor of rejection?
Yeah, dude, I mean, that's a whole topic for itself. Like, how do you get over the fear of rejection? There's a lot of things, like psychologically, that we could talk about, but just to give you some technical things, because we don't have a lot of time, you have to recondition your mind. At the end of the day, you have to find ways to learn to feel good with rejection, which is kind of a warped thing to do. One thing to do is to just not focus on success, but focus on failure instead. So what a simple old school hack is, if you call 100 people, I'm only going to reach 20 out of the 20, 18 are going to tell me to F off, then your goal shouldn't be to get 2 yeses, your goal should be to get to 18 no's. So what you'll do is you'll have like 18 little boxes on a whiteboard, and after every no, you go and get gratification. You axe it up. I'm making progress here. right? And, you know, every time I get to 18, I accomplish something. The good thing about that is sometimes you'll have good days, which in sales can be dangerous, and the first 2 calls you make are wins. Right? If your goal is to win, you're like, today I'm done, right? I've made it. But then the next day, you have no wins, right? So now you're not averaging out because you didn't call enough people. So that's one simple way, but there's a lot of work involved in dealing with that. Yeah?
Kind of follow-up question. If you get a rejection, will you call the company, the same company again?
Potentially, yeah. I mean, first of all, I don't take rejection personally, so I'm not like, I'm never going to talk to this person again. Because sometimes it's just like you're in a bad mood. If you had a shitty day, it doesn't matter, right? And then 3 months later, you might be in a good mood. So maybe I wouldn't say if somebody tells me no, I will never reach out. But it really depends on the economics and what you're doing. Does it really make sense? So you have such a small, precious, valuable pool that it makes sense for you to go back to the same people again and again. It might. I don't know. Last question. Make it a good one. No pressure.
Too late. Well, what happens like to the ones that you set up calls, but they don't show up. They don't pick up their phones. How many times you should call them and
And that's a good one. I mean, so when you schedule things, when you schedule calls and people don't show up, when you have no-shows, it can have a multitude of reasons. Number one, it can be that it's just that the close was really weak. So the person on the phone wanted an excuse to get off the phone, and I readily accepted it, although I could hear that the other person was totally not interested. And we both agreed to this social thing of doing something that will appear like we did something, but nobody really believes that's going to happen. So you need to listen to some of these calls. If you're doing it yourself, or bring somebody in to listen to you and be like, are these people really interested, or am I getting a distorted view? The other thing is, make sure that you send invitations for these. If they're really valuable, you might want to follow up the day before and reconfirm. Right? Give people are feeling a lot more uncomfortable when they just didn't show up. Then their tendency is not going to be not to pick up the phone and not to reply because they feel bad about themselves. So make it as easy as possible for people to feel good about themselves. So give them a day or two for them to go, yes, I can do this Wednesday, right? And then you might want to follow up a couple of times and see what happens, or automate that, but it would definitely follow up a bunch of times. If somebody scheduled something with me, you might want to follow up 3, 4, 5 times even, if it's valuable, because people also get busy once in a while. Just they have lives, something else came up, and then you wouldn't imagine how many times we had success just at the 10th follow-up or something. All right, that's it. Thanks, guys.